Hey guys, welcome back. We have a juicy one today. An absolute juicer, juicier than your stepsister. We have Sports Card Madness Podcast, a small channel, 153 subscribers. With the work that they're doing, if the rest of their content is anything like this, they should have far more than that. The 439 view part one here of an ex-Beckett grader comes clean and tells us everything is the most underrated thing I have seen in quite some time. So I'm going to link that down below. I want to touch on a lot of the juiciest of juicy points, the ones that I can add something of value, the ones that I'd like to discuss and just kind of blow your mind in Pokemon, in just BGS in general. I'm not going to touch too much on the like how he started his training and getting better grades and that kind of thing, but I do want to touch on the stuff that this looks really bad on Beckett. It's not good. It does not look good at all at any point. Most of this looks really bad, and this is probably why a lot of the time they keep this stuff under wraps. A lot of the time they probably want to have somebody in PR, but the lack of process, the lack of a lot of things is extremely concerning. I just buckle up. We got the first clip here. Absolutely ridiculous. The fact that, I mean, we criticized CGC for it before, but the fact that they don't, how in the world do they not have a process in place that you don't know whose cards you're grading? Like it should be unbiased as possible. I mean, you can never remove all of it, but just not making sure that people don't know whose cards are coming in is probably the first step.
You might sometimes even know whose cards like you're grading. As for example, too. So certain graders might have only done a certain person's order or different things like that. But you definitely do have some idea of whose cards you're doing, especially when I was there.
My apologies to all the people who always thought, oh yeah, they gotta put out a certain, the old gatekeeping. You gotta have a certain number of this grade. You gotta have a certain number of that grade. I never wanted to think that that was a real thing. I thought that was speculation, but it sounds like it might be. Sounds like it absolutely might be. But before we get into that clip, I do want to show off the legal disclaimer here. We almost forgot to put that bad boy in. Now, they did vet, I did vet, and they did vet even more than I vetted this individual and confirmed that he was a BGS employee. Now, does he have every detail perfectly correct? We don't know. I'd love to hear more from somebody that would like to speak out on any of it. If they have somebody in PR, if BGS would like to make a statement or a correction on any of this stuff, they're welcome to do so. He's very clear in the videos when it's something that's like speculation or something that's rumor, but it kind of makes sense. It all kind of makes sense.
It is a numbers game to an extent, where you have to give a certain number of 9.5s, like you have to give some BGS 10s. You have to put like certain subgrades on there that are 10 subgrades, things like that, because that's what drives the value, especially at BGS.
Part is kind of crazy, and it also, I guess, makes a whole lot of sense. We saw the Leonhardt resubmission at BGS, and everyone's like, what the hell? How did the centering change? That should be the most easy to assess, there should be little to no bias in terms of centering. Now, whether you have a special tool for that, whether you have one of those little pieces of plastic that show you the centering, whether, especially with Pokemon cards, I get it. Some of the sports cards may be a little bit more difficult. Maybe you'd need some kind of special template. The lack of tools that are available, the lack of technology, very easy to implement, very inexpensive to implement technology that could be going into this stuff, it's really showing itself here. Now, especially this big of a difference in centering grades. Like how does that happen? Now he's referring to himself as a junior grader, and then the senior grader is drastically changing the outcome of the grades that he's talking about. But again, there should be it shouldn't be that much of a swing.
And I think I gave it like a 8 or 8.5 centering. He gave it 9.5. So you can kind of see, like, I don't know if like maybe he just liked the card, or if he's trying to make sure they had given out a certain number of 9.5s, like I was saying. So
Here he's going to talk about how he was responsible for grading 200 cards in a 7.5-hour shift. That gives him 2.25 or 2 minutes and 15 seconds for each card. Now that's taking into consideration that you're doing nothing but grading and that you're ready to grade the next one right away. Clearly that's not going to be the case. He talks in the interview about how they would discuss things, how the other grader would talk to him about certain stuff. So it's probably not that much time. And again, we're going to touch on the super duper graders in a little bit here later on in the video, that we're doing it much faster. But with even if you pick your nose, even if you got to get up, stretch every now and then. I mean, you're not sitting down for 7.5 hours straight and doing this. Maybe you got to go to the bathroom. Maybe you got to blow your nose. Maybe you got to stretch. Maybe you got to get a new tote full of graded cards in between submissions, all that kind of thing. A lot of that stuff is going to play into that. So no, it's not a true, and that sounds like as good as it, as long as it got, and as good as it got was the fact that he was taking 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Now, maybe some took 2 minutes and 15 seconds, maybe some were faster, but we'll touch on it.
So I was actually like a junior grader. So like, for example, like I would get like a 200 card order for that day. Like I had to hit 200 cards for like the 7.5 hour shift. And I would put all the subgrades on it. And then, a senior grader would have to look over the cards.
I know this video is not about CGC, but this next little clip here it reminds me of the grading changes that were made by CGC in order to make people feel better. They got to feel better on the inside, on the outside. They got to feel better in their pants about the grades that they get. If your grades aren't good, you're probably not going to keep sending them into whatever grading company it is. So there's probably a balance there, but it's weird to have someone confirm, at least from their perspective, that it was a thing, that they had to make the grades better in order to not lose business.
They were losing, customers to PSA if they didn't give out, higher grades. That was when it kind of started. Because when I was there, like they were pretty comparable to PSA as far as like submissions and things like that.
So potentially even worse than the fact that you might know whose submission is on your desk, who you're grading for, is the fact that you would have a higher up, a supervisor, a manager, whatever you want to call them, and they're going to bring it over to you and they're going to mention who it's from. Not to mention, there's other parts where he mentions that you can see that it was labeled, the tote was labeled, that you know who some of these people are. Clearly, it's just a big gaping opportunity for things to go south in terms of being unbiased. Now, that also puts a little bit of pressure, I mean, it could put a lot of pressure on these graders to grade better, because if it's a big customer that they don't want to lose, if they want to do some favors, then that's going to be like, hey, Jimmy John, what do you think you're doing? That's our top submitter there. Why you giving them bad grades? They complained about it, and now you're in trouble. Did that happen? I mean, I'm making up a scenario here, but the fact that they're announcing to you that it's a big customer, clearly you have that understanding that customer is important to BGS, that they're an important customer. Are you going to grade them harshly? I mean, maybe it's still up to you whether you do or not. Maybe you don't get reprimanded for it. Maybe you do. Who knows? It should never become a scenario that needs to be discussed or why? Surely they can implement something that you don't know whose cards you're grading.
One of the higher ups or like one of our bosses would like just give the people orders and say, oh, here's an order from such and such, or here's a bigger order from here, and things like that. And they would just be put on your desk, and you would know whose is what.
So yeah, pretty grimy. I don't know, the whole aspect of them being reputable, them wanting to build their reputation as unbiased, and it's a fair thing. It's a third party assessment. That's kind of the purpose of these businesses. So when you do something like this and you have your boss, even though it's not public information necessarily, and unless somebody talks out about it, if you have your boss saying, hey, here's Johnny Jimbo Co., and this is their submission, they're our best customer, here you go, here's a big tote, a big submission, and you're giving it to a certain grader. Now, whether or not, it doesn't sound like there were a lot of graders. I kind of wish that they would have asked that, but it's just a little bit crazy that there's a lot of shenanigans. I mean, there's always shenanigans that can go on, but as the business, as the owner, as whoever's running the show here, as management, as higher ups, you got to put as many things in place as possible in order to prevent this stuff from going on. And that doesn't even sound like it's the worst of it. Now, a lot of this is speculation. He didn't end up going to shows, according to him, but from what he heard, there was a lot of potential for bad actions to take place at those shows, a lot of potential bribery, a lot of that stuff where it wasn't necessarily as overseen. Sometimes there was only one grader there, one person there to represent Beckett. His words, not mine. Again, all of this is just my opinion based on someone that is speaking out about their experience at Beckett. Take that as you will. But it sounds like some shadiness could be going on at the conventions, and that doesn't surprise me. I mean, we've seen there's been some shady things going on at the conventions, some shady things behind the scenes, some favors that have been done, and it would surprise me if none of it happened at any point. Now, whether or not that was approved or recognized by BGS, I think it's still something that they need to put something in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. Because if it comes out that it did, it looks tremendously bad on them.
They also went to a lot of the card shows and things like that, or drop-offs there. So you don't know exactly what was, so everything was going down. Like you heard the rumors on certain things, but
Are you Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and or Yu-Gi-Oh collectors ready for this bombshell? Now, according to him, in this part, when he was there, pre-pandemic, we're not going to go into the exact date. We don't know the exact date, in case it gets traced back to him. I would imagine that's probably a concern. But he's saying here that there was only one grader. There was one grader being paid as a junior grader to grade anything and everything trading card game related. All your Pokemon, all your Magic the Gathering, all your Yu-Gi-Oh was one guy. No one was double checking it. Junior grader wage, all of it. That is mind blowing. Like, I know there's been speculation that there aren't that many people at BGS, not that many people working there, not that, and that's why there's such a backlog, such an issue when you have something that goes wrong. No one seems to get back to you right away. Maybe super skeletal staffing is what's going on there, and maybe that makes sense when it's a downturn, maybe at this day and age where it doesn't seem like very many people are grading with BGS, especially not in the trading card realm. But like, how they weren't getting enough business to have more than one person, and like, how many was he pumping out? So everything he ever sent at that point in time was that one guy, according to our source here.
I know specifically like a person who graded all of their gaming stuff. He was the only guy that graded like their gaming like cards, like most of their cards, like Charizards or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic. And he was, at the time I was there, he was paid only as a junior grader, but he was literally the only guy that was doing the gaming. So they were vastly, underpaying him because they were putting all of his grades through on just whatever he says, was the case.
Crazy stuff. And apparently he was pumping out something, according to our source, something like 300 cards a day, which is going to be about a card per minute and a half, minute and 30 seconds. But again, that's without taking into consideration that you might be talking to a supervisor. Maybe you're a little late getting in. Maybe you have a bathroom break. Maybe you got to blow your nose. Maybe you have to go grab another submission. It's not actually the full allotted time, unless they were staying extra time for all of that other stuff. But highly doubt it. Take that into consideration. It's probably closer to a minute than a minute and a half. You got to take the card out and everything else. So maybe they're really quick at that stuff, but again, or maybe they have everything set up, but I kind of doubt it. You got to get your boxes. You got to get your separate submissions. You got to do all the stuff on the computing end. All of that needs to be done. All of that takes time and is not time that you're spending actually looking at the card. Like, by the time you have the card out, looking at it, inspecting it, it's going to be a fraction of that. It might even be half of whatever they're kind of quoting here. Who knows?
He's like, yeah, I think Beckett's way underpaying me because, nobody's really checking my grades, and they got me doing, 300 plus cards a day, and I'm the only one that's doing Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic. And he would tell me the stories like outside of work, and then but they never really gave him a promotion or anything.
Here he's going to reference that some of the people were doing 400 in their 7.5 hour shift, which is pretty crazy. That's just over a minute. It's like a 1.12 minutes or something like that. That's a lot of cards. Also, bathroom, you gotta have a bathroom break. You probably gotta stretch. You probably gotta open up the submission. You probably have to start your computer up and all of that stuff. Take that all into account. We got people speed running this stuff. I mean, we kind of knew that was the case. It's not really a surprise. But that's what it is. That's the magic behind the scenes of grading.
I was responsible for doing about 200 cards, whereas some of the other graders, they did like some of them did 3, and then some of them did even 4.
There's that 30 seconds per card that we've always quoted.
Wow. Yeah. So because there was one guy I knew that I don't know how he did it. He would spend about 30 seconds a card, but that was about the max time they wanted you to spend on it, was about a minute and a half.
With any kind of work like this, yes, you want people to be as accurate as possible and do it as fast as possible, because if you're paying them by the hour, you want them to get it done. You want them to get as much done as possible so you can have less employees and less overhead, and voila, you're making the big bucks. Now, it's weird that it seems, according to our source here, that there was an incentive that if you finished your 400 cards, you could just go home. So you could bang that stuff out as fast as possible. You could do it sub 30 seconds if you wanted to. It seems like as long as there weren't enough complaints, because that's usually how it works. If anything, whether you're working in a warehouse, anything of the sort, if you're banging out orders, if you can do them as fast as possible and there's never any complaints because you never screw them up, they're gonna love you. Because they're paying you probably the same amount as everyone else. If you can pump that stuff out, they don't get in trouble. The managers don't get in trouble. No one gets in trouble. They're just excited that you can do it as fast as possible. But it's crazy to me that there's just like a get out of grading free pass after you finish your work. Go home for the day. Go do whatever you do. Oh my God. This is crazy. If this is true, this is absolutely crazy.
If they hit their 400, they would get up and leave, and they were done for the day.
So we've joked about it on the channel here. We've seen the Kyogre Art Academy card that had seemingly mayonnaise slopped all over it. It's like, what are these? Are these graders like eating lunch at their desk, like right where they're grading the cards? This dude eating a mayonnaise sandwich while he's grading your cards? Like, what is going on here? But it seems like it was happening, according to our source. Not according to me, according to the source here, that people were eating at their desk where they were grading cards. That is something else. You would think it'd be a sanitary area. You'd think there'd be all kinds of ways to make sure you're cleaning your hands in between all of that stuff, and that you're not leaving breadcrumbs. And I mean, we've seen a lot of breadcrumbs and stuff. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe they're banging out sandwiches while they grade stuff so they can go home early.
And he just like ate lunch at his desk, and I sat like right in front of him, and then just he would do all his cards and then just go home and then that was it. So
this next part here requires a little bit of context, and we got the Sports Card Radio website that has it all gathered here. So there was a little bit of a scandal, a little bit of a scam where people were they're hypothesizing the fact that former BGS and current Leaf employee Joe Clemens was doing a little scammerino. Now, this is what they're going to reference here with the numbers, with the most of you have probably heard this story before. Someone used to work there, maybe had somebody on the inside who gave them a lot of black labels, like just an unreal amount of black labels. Now, the grader here is going to say that he only ever gave out one in his 1 year of working there. So surely if someone got a crap load of them all on one order, that would be suspicious, right? Now, even more suspicious is the fact that the only entity that got more than Joe was Leaf, was his employment, his place of employment, which is already kind of, I think it's kind of it's a little bit of a conflict of interest to begin with, because should a producer of trading cards be allowed to grade cards? No, probably not. Should they be? No, probably not. Now, what's going to happen here is, I guess the theory always was, we got some pretty ugly black labels, so that doesn't help his case any, in any case. But what we have here is some new information. Now, the story I always heard was that he likely had some kind of in on the inside. Maybe he had some grader that was doing him some special favors that gave him a bunch of sick, nasty grades. If he was working there before, maybe he knew someone on the inside that was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna pump your black labels all day, Joe." Now, this is all just according to the information that has been presented. We have the blowout threads. We have KYAA on blowout, who has cataloged a ton of this. How many pages we got here? We got over 101 pages of information on here. You can see here just everything that's bold here, black labels to the extreme, and just at an impossible rate. No matter how good of a pre-grader you are, well, unless it turns out you're grading your own stuff. So the source here, the BGS source, the one that we've been listening to in this video, is saying that he believes that Joe graded those cards himself. That is not just, that is so much worse than if he just submit them and someone did it. I mean, it's all bad. If someone just was like, "Oh yeah, it's Joe, I better give him all these black labels." But the fact that he was able to go in there and do it himself, allegedly, according to the source here. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly what happened. But if it did, that is a mind-blowingly conflict of interest to the extreme. If you can let somebody grade their own cards, that is next level ridiculous. I mean, it seems like it's possible. Whether it was him or someone else, it's the black labels here are at such an alarming rate. Like, how do you get this many black labels in one submission? If this grader that we're talking to, this grader that we're listening to, gave out one in a year, I don't give a shit if you inspected those with your two eyes, your butthole, you swiped it through your butt crack to make sure it was extra. This doesn't happen, right? This has got to be pretty improbable. Listen to it here. This is the craziest part, I think, of the whole thing.
You worked there for a little over a year and you have one black label in that entire time. Is that kind of standard, like one black label per person per year?
Well, so this actually happened after I left. There was like a black label controversy where, I think it was a guy that was working for Leaf, and he would come in and contribute on weekends, and he was one of their graders that would just come in when they were to help out. Like, he wasn't really there working full time or part time or anything like that. He just must have been like a contributor or been a grader in the past. And he actually, like, the rumors are, he actually came in the office like on the weekend, and somehow he got a hold of his own order, and he gave himself 180 like plus black labels on one order, which is like almost like unheard of.
So here, it's going to seem like there were some sort of precautions and or rules put in place. He talks about how you weren't allowed to sell cards if you were a grader. That kind of makes sense. But at the same time, is that rule in place because it's easier for them to get caught on it? Because if you're publicly posting, like, someone's going to catch on to the fact that, like, "Oh, this guy grades for BGS and look, he's buying and selling stuff. What's going on there?" Versus if it's behind the scenes, if it's something that maybe you don't need to have as many precautions in place if you have at shows, if you got stuff, the raw card review at shows, stuff like that, where there could be some bad stuff going on. Or maybe you have Joe, according to him, maybe he graded his own cards. Again, I was not there, do not know, cannot confirm for sure, but it doesn't seem improbable. So they have some rules, not other rules. Maybe certain people have certain rules. It seems like that's kind of a theme. Some rules for thee, not for he, kind of scenarios where maybe you can get away. Maybe you can weasel some things a little bit more than other people, depending on your situation, depending on your name, depending on what you do for the company, depending on how long you've been there, depending on how G-baller of a customer you are for these companies. It seems like the favoritism is there. Now, you would hope that they would reduce that as much as possible, but it doesn't seem like that's the case.
You can't sell any graded cards like under your name. Like, you can't sell them on like eBay. Like, you can't set up at shows. You can't post stuff on forums.
Here he's talking about training a little bit, and this kind of leads me to believe that even the most basic of basic tasks is not it's not automated, and this might be why we see every now and then we see something that gets all 10s in the subgrades, and then it doesn't get a black label mysteriously. You would think that they'd have something set up that you type in the subgrades, and then it calculates and creates the label from those subgrades. That would be the most basic of basic thing that you could have somebody. You could probably go on Fiverr and get someone to do it for $5. They could program you a little thing where you type in the subgrades and it gives you the ending grade, and it would prevent any human error that happens there. It would certainly reduce the amount of human error. I mean, you can obviously type in the wrong number in any of the subgrades and end up with the wrong outcome, but the embarrassing mistakes that they can make, that they have made, where it's like these subgrades don't add up to what the grade is. But again, it's just something that doesn't need to be done by your employee. It's something that can easily be automated, like super easily, very super mega easy to the extreme.
And they just pretty much tell you, they're like, yeah, if in order to get a 9.5, you need 3 9.5s and a 9.
Throughout this entire thing, I mean, I am maybe the biggest critic of grading. I'm as impartial, as unbiased as possible, because I don't grade my cards with any of these companies. I think that you, again, I always say this, you as somebody that is in the hobby collecting, whether it's sports cards, whatever, whether it's Pokemon, whether it's Yu-Gi-Oh, whether it's Magic, if you spend a few years in the hobby and you really buckle down and learn and are eager to learn, you're going to know more than these graders do about the cards that you own, about the cards that you're buying, about the cards that you're selling. You should have a better assessment. You're going to spend, you can spend more than 30 seconds on your card evaluating the condition on it. Now, there are many reasons to grade with a third party. If you want to do it for dollar bills, whatever it might be, maybe you just really like expensive plastic over top of your stuff and you refuse to put it in like in one of those magnetic holders or snap down, whatever. Spoiler, it's the same thing, but that's what it is. People like to they like to collect condition, and unfortunately, they don't get the clout from saying, "Hey, this is a 10. This is my own 10. I gave it a 10." People would be like, "Oh, yeah, but did PSA or BGS or CGC give it a 10?" And they'll be like, "No, I gave it a 10 myself." Personally, I don't care if people think that my cards are good or bad. If they pass my own qualifications, if they look good enough, like they just came out of a pack, I mean, short of the stuff that comes damaged out of the pack, then it's good enough for me. And worry less about what people think about your collection, and make sure you're collecting what you want and not just to impress others. Now, different story if you're doing it for the sake of grading, if it can be worth more money because people want to collect 10s, people want to collect certain stuff. Sure, there's reasons for that. I don't get the reasons. I don't really care about those reasons, but you do you. Remember that. Don't feel like you need to grade. Don't feel like you need to not grade. Do what you want to do. Do what you enjoy. And if you're doing it as a business, then if something makes you money, by all means do it, as long as it's not hurting anyone else.
My biggest challenge that I thought was the toughest was when you would get some of these card like trimmers. If they tried to like trim the edges, it would be really hard to tell if if the card's been trimmed.
Now he's going to talk about how he was using a ruler. Now this is pretty ridiculous to me that they don't have some kind, like maybe have templates, or if you have different eras, different templates to say like, hey, does this card fit within this certain parameters? Is it this size? Is it this size to this size? He mentions a ruler. If they're using like we're going back to school, we're gonna buy some school supplies, and my pencil case, it comes with this handy dandy ruler. Sometimes you get the jelly ones that you can flop around, but the fact that they're not using like a caliper, I'm going to assume that he misspeaks here and he says that it could be centimeters in difference, because if it's centimeters in difference and you can't just tell by eye that the card has been trimmed, that's maybe he meant millimeters. Again, maybe he doesn't know what a caliper is, that it's not a ruler, but he keeps referencing ruler, and I kind of have to believe that he might be just using a ruler. That is terrifying, and we've seen many cards that were trimmed that have been graded by these companies. We see before and after pictures, again, on the blowout forums. It happens. It's going to happen, but the fact that there's no precaution in place, and the fact that the trimming should be the easiest. the easiest of all of these to identify. And the fact that you don't even seem to have the ability to measure these to make sure that they're within spec it blows my mind. It blows my mind. I mean, sometimes some of this stuff is probably pressed out to the point that it should be very close to whatever it's going to be. But again, this is like where it doesn't need to be AI. It doesn't need to be robo grading to the extreme. And even then, like the AGS stuff is not, in my opinion, I don't even think it really qualifies as AI. It's more just a series of scans and measurements and everything like that. There should be some of this stuff implemented to know, like, hey, if I put this down, or even if it's a physical version of that, where you put it down and you can see whether it's too big, too small, what's going on with this, what's going on exactly. Not to mention the fact that there should be scans of all these cards so that you know exactly what's coming back in. Shouldn't be that hard to implement something where there's going to be small details that are not the same on any card. Like, they're all going to have slight differences, and if you take enough of a scan, a high enough resolution scan, when you bring these things back in to your grading company, when somebody tries to resubmit them, whether they alter something on it or anything else, you should be able to tell if it's the same card, especially for the higher dollar value stuff. Maybe you're not doing it on $5 cards, bulk submissions or whatever, but this high end stuff that gets altered and then no one catches it blows my mind that they don't have some kind of scan there that they can go refer back to it. And if it's advanced enough, you can just have it go search the database for whatever that card is, and you can be like, oh, this is Jim Jami Jr., who resubmit this bad boy. It looks like he's been trimming and he's been scrubbing and dubbing it. What's going on here? He bleached it, he pressed it, he cut it, he colored in some of the corners. You should see all of those differences. Again, like especially on the old stuff, like the stuff that has like stains on it, like the vintage stuff, the very expensive sports stuff. It all has such defining differences. Like even the paper itself, there's certain imperfections in the paper in certain places that you know it's the same thing. Same with all the signed cards, all the signed stuff, all the like numbered stuff. It should be very easy for them to, as soon as it comes across their desk, it might take more than 30 seconds. But again, it should take more than 30 seconds. If it's an expensive card, if it's something that's questionable, they should be taking extra time on that. No, I don't think they need all day to do each individual card. But when you have something suspicious or you have something expensive, there should be a scan done. There should be a database that you can go back and look at and say, like, hey, this has been submit 25 times. This is Jimmy John Joe that keeps sending this thing in. He's cracked it 40 times. He's trying to get a higher grade on it. Oh, look, he damaged it since last time, whatever it might be. Easy peasy, right? You would think that they would be that advanced at this point in time, but they're not. It looks like it's still smoke and mirrors. A lot of it is smoke and mirrors. A lot of it is like, people want to believe, people maybe have money invested in this stuff, and maybe they spent a lot of money on the cards, maybe they spent a lot of money on grading, whatever it might be. If you have money in the stuff, you don't want it to be as bad as it is, as bad as it seems from this interview, as bad as it seems from a lot of the incidents that happen. No, bad things don't happen every single time. People don't misgrade things every time. They don't lose your cards every time. They don't damage your cards every time. But that kind of thing happens. And to like just blindly believe that these grading companies are always doing the right thing, that it's super ethical, that it's super fair, it's super unbiased, and that they're always right all the time is just, it's ridiculous. I mean, you can ask anyone that submits a lot of cards, they're going to get cards back and they're going to disagree with a bunch of the grades. Maybe some orders, they're happy with the grades because they graded higher than expected. Maybe some they graded lower. They got to crack those. They got to send them back in. They got to pay the company more money to do their job over again. Whew. All right, clip.
Where you almost had to because you couldn't measure it, because it was really tough to measure stuff, even if it was trimmed, because it's within centimeters that something like that has, if you can tell. So that was my biggest thing, because some of the stuff that people did try to put through, where some people may or may not have caught it if they tried to trim it.
Here he's going to talk about how it is difficult to notice that if cards are colored or not, or have been colored in. So a lot of the times with Pokemon stuff, you'll see people will use like a blue Sharpie or something on the backside to try and make the white edges, the white borders, the whitening around the edges and corners. Try to color that in to make it look like there's less damage on the card than there actually is. Now, usually you can see this with the naked eye. You put it in the right lighting, you can kind of tilt it back and forth. You can see that the ink is not going to be the same if you have it under magnification, even more so. But there should be a series of lights that these cards go in underneath so that they can tell. either so that if you have a certain ink, a certain thing, maybe it makes it more visible, makes the process quicker. I don't know if they need to have UV lights or whatever else to quickly put the card underneath to make sure that there's no shenanigans going on with things being colored in, maybe residue from a certain polish or anything else that was used to alter the card. Yes, polish is altering the card because you're removing some of the material from the card itself. Now, if you're just rubbing it, taking dirt off of it, different story. But usually whenever someone's referring to cleaning, whenever someone's referring to buffing and scruffing or polishing, it's polishing. It's altering the card. You're removing some of the material and or adding material to a card that was not there from the get-go. She's altering. That's what it is.
A guy tried to like color a corner of like a Sidney Crosby Upper Deck Young Guns rookie. So that was like a popular card that people submitted, and he would color like the corner just to try to get the card from like an 8 to like a 9 or like a 9.5 or something like that. So, but something like that was very hard to see. So you got like a loop, or you got like a certain like even like ruler to measure stuff. So.
All right, for all of you that have tuned in this long, this is one of the juiciest tidbits. The most unethical, but still he's self-snitching, I guess, at this point in time. It's wild to me. There seems to be no process in place, at least at the time of his employment, if it's all legitimate, according to this source, that there's nothing in place that if you recognize someone's cards, whether it's a friend of yours, whether it's your father, that there's nothing in place that says like, hey, I need to drop what I'm doing. I need to hand this order off to somebody else. I mean, whether or not you recognize it halfway through or at the beginning, there should be something in place where BGS is just like, hey, if you know where these cards came from, if you even think that you might know who owns these cards, you need to tell us. You need to pass them off to somebody else so that it can be as unbiased as possible. And this is the complete opposite.
My dad did submit with that guy still from Texas that got me the job. So we knew like when that guy was submitting orders. So it was pretty funny. Some of his cards actually showed up on my desk, the guy that I was friends with. So like one time I recognized a few of my dad's cards, and I tried to like give him, like some favorable grades to like the best of my ability, things like that. But I didn't slap on like all kinds of like black labels or 10s or anything like that. So
goes into more detail on the card shows and about how it might be very unsupervised, at least in comparison to what's going on in the facility, which already sounds like a little bit of a mess.
These guys would be sent off to like card shows, and you don't know what's going on or what some of these dealers are telling them if they're the only person there that's representing Beckett and say, hey, by the way, if you give me a 9.5, I'll throw you an extra 300-400.
All right, so now we have the, you guys remember those BCG slabs, the ones that you find in those mystery boxes that were claiming you could find PSA, you could find BGS, all that fun stuff on the packaging, and who would have known it? I think there were some people who made videos on it. The fact that the actual PSA and BGS cases could not even fit in those mystery boxes made the packaging pretty much a lie, pretty much an overall lie. But here he's going to talk about how Beckett also does those. And essentially, if you think it's going to get a BGS 8.5 or above, that they would just give it a 10. That is pretty crazy.
In 8.5, you just literally look at the card and just say, okay, this is going to get at least a BGS 8.5, BCCG 10, and then on to the next, like over and over. And that has no subgrade. So I did some of those orders occasionally. Some people did do those, I think, because they're like $10 a slab or something like that. They're still pretty cheap. So yeah, we definitely did do the same process when there was no subgrades though, too, to answer your question.
Okay. You kind of expect it. I kind of expect it, but just hearing him say that like they really can't tell when things are altered and usually can't tell when something is trimmed is like it's kind of disappointing, because that's their business model, is the fact that you're going to rely on them to recognize all this stuff, and it sounds like they might be more hopeless than a lot of experienced collectors. Again, not a surprise to me, but to hear it said out loud by somebody who allegedly worked there, it's that stinks.
Because you can't tell if the card's been cleaned or if it's been altered. Like it
Hmm.
looks, unless they trimmed it and then, you know, things like that. But
All right, we only have one clip left before I leave you with that one. It's a juicy one. I'd like to thank Sports Card Madness for putting this together, the Beckett employee for participating in the interview. It was wild. And I don't know if I've said it already, but thank you to Auburn35 for pointing me in this direction. He tagged me on Twitter, and it's amazing that like barely anyone saw this. I know Sports Card Radio covered it already, I think yesterday on their channel. But now just make sure you're going to check out their channel. Check out this interview in its entirety. It's worth the watch. It's in 2 parts. It's very long, but there's a whole lot of other information that I haven't covered, and hopefully they put out more like this in the future. Again, wild that didn't gain traction, or hopefully it does now. But yeah, just a crazy video. Here's the final clip. Enjoy.
some of these guys only spent like 30 seconds to even like 45 seconds on a card. They wouldn't care if like your card's worth like 50 grand or if your card's worth like $50.